Okay, so we're going to open up. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us in this Graduate Open Day. My name is Mara Torres Pinedo. I'm the Director of Education at the Institute for Global Prosperity, and I'm going to be hosting this session. Just for you to be aware, if you just joined, this session is being recorded to be able to share with people that probably couldn't make it or people that want to revisit what we present today. If you want to ask questions or raise any comments, you can use it. You can do that using the Q&A box on Zoom. A little bit of the content that we're going to be covering in today's sessions. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the Institute for Global Prosperity, and then we're going to hear about the specifics of the three main programs that we have. My colleague Joan will give you the introduction to MSc Global Prosperity. Ida will be giving you the introduction to Prosperity, People and Planet, and Onia will intro Prosperity, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. Then we're going to be able to hear from Javiera del Canto Beas, one of our IGP students this year, who will be sharing her experience as a student and also her experience in gaining access to one of the main scholarships that we have available. Then we're going to give a space for your Q&A towards the end of the session to be able to respond as many doubts as you might have. And then we're going to close with a little bit of info and general contact details in case you want to follow up on the conversation with us after this session. As I was mentioning, I'm joined by three of my colleagues, program leaders of the three main programs that we have at IGP, and who will be introducing the main courses that we have. And then Javiera will be sharing her experience with us in this academic year. But why global prosperity? We are an institute that cares deeply about the well-being of people and planet. And as our founder of director, Professor Henrietta Moore has put it, is when we are trying to understand the prosperity of communities and nations, it's not just only about improving GDP. You also need to fight inequality, promote social cohesion, care about the environment, and provide education and basic universal services for everyone around. And this should be done within planetary boundaries. We are an institute that are committed to transdisciplinary research and practice, which are inclusive, ethical, and just. We value different forms of knowledge, different cultures, learning styles to amplify these diverse perspectives about prosperity and well-being that can challenge conventional structures of power. And we also recognize deeply the interdependence between the natural and human world and the need for rebalancing these current unsustainable practices and ways of thinking to be able to promote change that is sustainable and that is fair and just throughout. Throughout our research and our education programs, we value interdisciplinary collaboration. So if you come to study with us, you're going to be learning across disciplines to design innovative solutions for real-world challenges. We also put a particular emphasis to systems thinking approaches, particularly in the MSc PPP. This is a core element of how the curricula is structured. We also, most of our teaching practice are rooted in experiential and reflective learning. This means that you're gonna have hands-on experience combined with reflective practice to get a deeper understanding of the challenges and the potential solutions for today's global challenges. And then we put also a lot of emphasis in co-creation and participatory research, either in our research projects by the research team, but also in terms of the tools and the skills that we help you develop to then be able to run your own MSc dissertation project. Now I'm going to pass to my colleague Joan to give an introduction to MSc Global Prosperity.
Thank you, Mara. It doesn't seem that I can change. Oh, yes, I can control the slides from my side. Yes.
I can pass if you tell me.
Yeah. So next slide, please. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Yuan He. I'm leading the MSc GP program. So we are an institute that was established 10 years ago, and the Global Prosperity is our first master's program. We are quite different from traditional. If you come from a traditional university, we're quite different from many of the traditional disciplines in the sense that we emphasize forward-looking. We want to bring positive disruption to the existing a way of how society is organized. And we also want to bring you to the frontier of knowledge and engage with the radical thinking. Next slide, please. So why prosperity and why are we passionate about what we are doing? I think for many of us who grew up in the post like 2000s, we are really witnessing the biggest global economy in history, right? So as you can see from this chart, in terms of GDP, total GDP produced around the world, it is a very positive upward trend across the past decades or even centuries. However, that GDP growth doesn't really alleviate other social problems that we are seeing, including climate change, environmental degradation, political divisions, and how society is really divided these days, income inequality and poverty, war and violence that we are unfortunately still experiencing today. As a result, large-scale displacement and the deficit in education, health, quality jobs. Therefore, we seriously question, is more economic growth the solution to these problems, or is there an intrinsic problem with the kind of model of how the society is organized? Next slide, please. So, and because of this, I know that for many students who come from traditional economics or social science background, for quite a long time, if you think about your own country, when you listen to the economic news, it's always, our country has reached the GDP growth of 2% or sometimes 10% if the economy is growing really well. But what we try to bring students together to think about what GDP actually measures and what is actually not being captured by the GDP. Therefore, a group of scholars, including Professor Robert Constanza, as well as Ida, who is the MSc program lead of PPP, they published a Nature comment.
And Joe is one of our students.
Yeah, a PhD student. Yeah, PhD student in our program. So this is really a kind of concerted team effort from the IGP trying to see that why we need to agree on alternative measurement to GDP, since GDP does not really measure the many of the social well-being that we care about. Next slide, please. And here is a quote from their article. And specifically, we don't have time to read everything, but the general idea is that the GDP, first of all, is not designed to be a measurement of societal well-being, and therefore it's not expected that it fails to capture, for example, ecological limits, inequality, declining social cohesion, as well as the right challenge posed by the artificial intelligence to the society. Therefore, it is really the time that we think about and measure and modeling what truly matters. And I think that is one of the main idea that is behind why we want to promote the idea of prosperity rather than just focus on the GDP. Next slide, please. Apart from that, because we are also a transdisciplinary social science department. So apart from this top-down approach of rethinking about what actually matters from a more scholarly perspective, we also want to bring in the lived experience of different communities across different parts of the world, because we highly value place-based prosperity. For example, a monk who lives in India would value life very differently in comparison to a banker who lives in Canary Wharf here in London, right? So we need to take all that kind of cultural and the place and the different stages of development into consideration. Therefore, a top-down, bottom-up approach to complement the kind of comprehensive measurement of GDP, replacement of GDP is our place-based prosperity. Next slide, please. And this is mainly delivered through our citizen prosperity indexes, where we try to collaborate with local communities and ask them what really matters for them and what is their priorities in life, what do they think, what do they perceive as a good life, and therefore constructed according to the kind of citizen science method that we are also championing here at the IGP, and produce a place-based, more bottom-up approach in providing the understanding of what is a good life and what matters to people. Next slide, please. And why are we passionate about citizen science? Because we believe that people's lived experience really matters, and it helps us to produce better data, because nobody understands the lived life better than the people who live it themselves, right? So, and also academia needs to be useful. We are celebrating the 200th anniversary of UCL, and this kind of disruptive thinking, radical thinking is, and also making knowledge more useful for the general society is embedded in the almost the foundation, the gene, the ideas behind why UCL was established in the first place. Next slide, please. And here is just, I'm not going to elaborate on this. This is just a way to show that by through the citizen science approach, we're trying to really work across a broader set of stakeholders. And this is an illustration from our long-term London Prosperity Board project based in East London for over 10 years. Next slide. And at the same time, we are also trying to promote a whole new kind of a social welfare provision or social welfare system called universal basic services. Because traditionally, many countries that has been championing on the universal basic income, some students might have heard about it, faces the challenge that even the people who are historically excluded from society, even if you give them income, that income cannot be sufficiently being effectively transferred into providing the basic social needs that they need, because exclusions comes in multiple ways, not just in monetary sense. And therefore, we are trying to design a whole system approach to social protection. And this becomes especially relevant in the age of AI, when we are seeing the fast concentration of wealth, power, and political voices to those who are already have a lot. So if we are living in a society that is more and more unequal, and then providing the basic social protection becomes even more relevant for people who are living in a vastly transformative and volatile period of time. Next slide, please. And therefore, I think this summarizes what the Global Prosperity Program is trying to teach or trying to deliver, that we look at global challenges, we try to redefine what matters, we evaluate its social and policy impact, and we try to produce together with students and bringing our stakeholders into the research and teaching process, global change makers that are more forward-looking and prepare for the future changes that humanity is facing. So that is part of my presentation. And now we welcome Ida, who is the program lead of PPP, to introduce the program.
Thanks, Yuan, and thanks for introducing some of my research. So that saved me some explanation. That was very nice. Next slide. So this is sort of what we tackle in PPP. So you'll see that there is some overlap, as you notice with Yuan talking about some of my research. There is some overlap in the programs. What we do in PPP is we take more environmental perspective. So we come at some of the same issues, but from the environmental side, and then look at the social and economic aspects as well. Next slide, please. And we start with looking at the fact that we are living in a different era. So Yuan showed that GDP has grown exponentially pretty much over the last about 50 to 70 years since World War II. And if you look at the long term, since basically zero year, it has been growing slowly, but it really has taken off. But other indicators have been growing exponentially since about 1950 as well. So if you look at greenhouse gases, ozone depletion, climate, marine ecosystems, coastal zone, nitrogen cycle, tropical forest land systems, biosphere integrity, they have all changed quite significantly since 1950 in the last 70, 80 years. And what we're seeing is, if you go to the next slide, you're seeing the same kind of acceleration happen in the human enterprise. So if you're looking at population, economic growth, which Yuan mentioned, freshwater use, energy use, urbanization, globalization, transportation, communication, all of these have also grown exponentially since 1950. And this is what a lot of us are calling the Anthropocene. Where we are living in a new era that is dominated by humans and our stuff. And so trying to live, as we are part of nature, trying to live with the rest of nature is one of the questions we talk about. So next slide. And we do this from different frameworks. So one is the Planetary Boundaries, which was published in 2009 originally. And actually, Robert Costanza, who teaches in PPP, was on that paper as well. And there's been updates to that paper over the few years. And you notice that not only have we found that we're crossing more boundaries, but we're also finding that there are other boundaries, that we're understanding the system better. And I'm sure in the next few years, we'll find new boundaries and we'll cross additional boundaries until things will get better. So there is this evolution in research over the years as well, both knowledge and where the world is going. Next. And same with PPP, we are incorporating the social aspects on top of those. So many of you probably have heard of donut economics, which looks at basically the social foundation on top of the planned boundaries. Here's another lecture in the course. But basically, it looks at, can humans survive within the planetary boundaries while making sure that we meet the needs of all humans, right? So humans and nature. So as Yuan was saying, that recently there's been a lot more inequality around the world, and that's one of the other things that has been growing significantly. How do we deal with that? But not just inequality of income, but inequality of health, inequality of opportunities, education, being ensuring that everybody's hitting those, at least that social foundation. Next. And we approach this from sort of the capital's perspective quite often. So looking at the fact that we do have human built social and natural capital, and those do have to come together to create human well-being, but not directly. They have to interact. You can't have one contributing to sustainable being without interacting with the other. And we do this through our research at the national and global level, but there's a lot of work being done, especially in IGP and other parts, that look at the community level. And are finding the same thing, that people need that interaction with the capitals, need that inequality to be reduced, need that individual identity and culture. So next. And as Joanna was talking about, one of the big things we're working on with a lot of governments, actually, especially the EU government, about taking some of these ideas and saying, okay, how do we replace GDP or supplement GDP, maybe even alter GDP that hasn't been chosen, but how do we do that while adding some of the things that do matter to people that GDP does ignore? And that's work that's ongoing, and we'll discuss that in class as we go as well. And when I say ongoing is I'm just coming back from an EU workshop that talked exactly about how do we deal with GDP and what's after GDP and what's next. So there's a lot of work going on around this. So next. Okay, that's me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ida. Hi, everyone. My name is Onya, and I co-lead the MSc in Prosperity, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship with my colleague Conrad. He's not here at the moment. Next slide, please. So what does PI focus on? For us, the focus is we come at some of the issues that Yuan and Ida already highlighted from an entrepreneurship and innovation perspective. So we think about things, or one of the central focus points for us is, how do entrepreneurs address these issues, or how do they address systems and structures that create, reproduce, and reinforce some of the challenges that Yuan and Ida already mentioned? And therefore, what you will do on the program is students will begin to, within a safe space, so the program is the best place for you to experiment. Start to experiment and develop ventures that can tackle environmental, economic, or social challenges There's a module called Connected Innovation Project. There's also a placement module. There you get to work on real world problems, partnering with real world partners. And then you also are able to learn about how to lead change. So the program is not just for entrepreneurs who go out and start a business or lead a startup. It's also for entrepreneurs. So you could be within business, governments, you could be working within an NGO and still have that entrepreneurial mindset and using that to address some of the big challenges that we've just talked about. Next slide, please. So on PI, we will explore the role of transformative entrepreneurship in addressing global challenges, and we'll broaden how we conceptualize entrepreneurship. In essence, how do we think about entrepreneurship for society today? And what's the purpose of entrepreneurship? Who is the entrepreneur? Is it the lone entrepreneur that we see mostly in the media? Who is the entrepreneur? Can a community be an entrepreneur? So and in order to broaden our understanding of entrepreneurship, to address some of the issues we see, we'll consider the limitations of transformative entrepreneurship and we'll draw on several perspectives. So Yuan Omara mentioned that we take a transdisciplinary approach. We'll use several perspectives such as effectuation, community-based entrepreneurship, feminist and colonial perspectives to try to understand some of these issues. Next slide, please. So these are the Sustainable Development Goals. A growing awareness of some of these global challenges has led to, of course, the UN developing and defining these goals. And what this does for us is that we're able to then take a shared, sort of, if you like, shared problem that we can look at and begin to work together. So this is sort of like a coordinating device for entrepreneurs, for scientists, etc. Next slide, please. So if you think about some of the issues that are highlighted in this slide, for example, ecological challenges or environmental challenges, homelessness, think about if you remember that Tesco bag. I realized when I put this slide up, it was a while ago when we used these bags. Think about when you go for your grocery shopping, where do these bags go? Think about some of the issues that you observe in your communities, back in your homes. Well, how can social enterprises, how would you address this problem if you were an entrepreneur? If you look at a problem around you, don't think too far. Just look at the plastics in the ocean. Think about the clothes that you wear. Think about where the clothes come from. How would you address some of these problems from an entrepreneurial point of view? Bear that in mind. And now what I'd like to do is dive into a sort of micro teach. And for us to begin to think about problems, particularly those that were highlighted in the Sustainable Development Goals, it's useful for us to really step back and understand what type of problem we're dealing with. And to do that, we need tools. We need conceptual and practical tools that will help us to actually get a better understanding of the problem before you begin to define or develop a solution. Next slide, please. What this slide shows you, it's a really neat framework for thinking about different types of problems. Typically, the way that we see problems is you see a problem, oh, there's an ecological problem, or there's inequality, or there's homelessness, or people livelihoods are being affected. What do we do? Let's come up with a solution. Let's just ideate, execute, and see the outcomes. What's your theory of change? Well, sometimes some solutions there's not a straight linear path from your idea to the solution. And so I want to talk about these four types of problems. The first is the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons, it really just talks about complex social problems that involve dealing with shared resources. How do we allocate these resources? How do different actors utilize these resources for their own self-interest? Perhaps they might overuse or they might deplete the shared resource with no regard for others. So a really good example is if you think about the extractive industry or extractive companies or sectors like mining, etc. They access resources sometimes at the expense of others, such as labor. The next problem is social problems. And this really gets you to think about the social structures that precede tackling an actual problem. So how do we come to pay attention to certain problems and not others? Why are some problems the priority and others are not the priority and others are backgrounded? There are implications for this for entrepreneurs, because if you think about it, if you're a regenerative entrepreneur, which is where my current research is, if you're a regenerative entrepreneur proposing some sort of socio-ecological solution to environmental problems, but now the focus or the attention is on AI, one of the implications for you as an entrepreneur is that where the capital flows will be to what the current focus or attention is. So then you'll see calls or grants that are focused on AI. Investors are more interested in businesses or startups that are AI focused as opposed to other things. So what are the social structures that cause us to focus on certain problems and not others? The third one are wicked problems. You'll see this depicted by the entangled diagram and the arrows pointing in different directions. These problems cannot even be defined. Like you can barely define the contours of these problems. And these are probably, this word or term, wicked problems, is probably the most famous of all. We hear this a lot. It's a wicked problem. These kind of problems are hard to establish a shared definition of the problem because there's so many stakeholders involved. There's so many directions for which you can look at it. There is no single simple solution to these kind of problems. They are complex, they are messy. There's no clear cause and effect structure in existence. And so all of these descriptions capture the idea of a wicked problem and how they resist linear thinking, linear diagnosis, and they cannot be solved in one definitive way. Finally, you have meta problems. This is a set of, with the meta, just the word meta tells you it's a problem of problems. So it's a set of problems, if you like, or a system of problems that are interconnected and interdependent, and they exceed the capacity of any single one actor or organization or entrepreneur. So you can't say that, for example, Elon Musk is going to solve one problem, or that entrepreneur is going to solve that meta problem or complex problem. These types of problems require inter-organizational, multi-level adaptive responses rather than isolated action. So if you think again about those SDGs, just go back to those SDGs. Even during class, when you're taking one of the modules that we teach, which is Transformative Entrepreneurship and Prosperity Design, you will be asked to pick a sustainable development goal from the 17 goals. You will be asked to develop a business solution that addresses it, even though you'll be working on this in groups in the classroom. In the real world, typically the entrepreneur would be collaborating with several stakeholders, including those that are actually being affected by the challenge itself. So that ideation, action, outcome, problem solved linear pathway that we learn in mainstream entrepreneurship, it won't work when you're dealing with these types of problems. My last slide, next slide, please. Actually, that's not my last slide. So I want to give you an example, and I want to test your understanding, including my colleagues, Ida, Yuan, Mara, everyone. I want to test your understanding with this example. So everyone knows Tom's, right? Everybody knows the shoes. Some of us probably own a pair. And this was a shoe company founded in 2006 by American entrepreneur Blake Mycoskie. After he went on a trip to Argentina and he saw children were in need of shoes, and he was inspired by the alpargata design. So he created this business model of a one-to-one business model. You purchase a shoe is donated to someone in need. The problem with this is that by sending shoes to some particular parts of the world, that's Tom's, what happened is that they completely destroyed the local shoe industry within those communities, creating new problems within the communities. So that failure to account for the implications of their decision to do good actually caused more harm than good at the end of the day. So my question for you is, if you think back to that 2 by 2 matrix with the types of problems, what type of problem does this Tom's case illustrate? And you can put it in the chat. So feel free to put your answer in the chat. Is Tom's a wicked problem? Ida, is Tom's because you're the one I can see, I'm not picking on you. Is Tom's a social problem? Is it a tragedy of the commons problem? What kind of problem are we dealing with? Mara, Yuan, what do you think? I need someone who can unmute. Well, what do you think? Ida, I'm going to pick on you just to get
Sure.
us moving. What
That's
kind of
fine.
problem is this?
I think it's a complex problem, right? I think it's an inequality problem at its heart. I think it's
Using the
that
4 types of problems, which one would you say this is a problem of?
I'm choosing option 5, inequality.
No, whoever's controlling the slides, could you take us back to the matrix? Thank you. Which of these 4 problems, Ida?
I'm choosing number 5, inequality.
There is no number 5, Ida. Go with it.
But that's
I
what I'm
mean,
choosing.
yeah,
There
and it
is.
can be linked to several ones. It can be linked to several ones, no?
Mara, what
But
do
I
you
think
think? Should have gone with Mara
I
from
think
the
it's more
beginning.
of a meta problem, no? Because you have engaged with multiple stakeholders. It was total lack of consideration of the local communities. And although at its heart, it's also linked to environmental and social problems such as inequality, as Ida was saying, no?
That's exactly, I should have gone with Mara from the beginning. It is exactly
Well,
a meta problem.
usually with
And,
most things.
hopefully some of you have the answers correct. But if you think about it, right, as Mara was saying, there were so many systems at play, right? And this was a meta problem. There was inequality. There were several things happening that Toms did not take into consideration. So the case is quite like Tony's Chocolonely. If you think of Tony's Chocolonely, that's the chocolate maker. They try to deal with child labor within the chocolate supply chain, but they do it from a systems point of view. Amara talked about this when she described the PPP program. That is, even within PI, we're thinking from a systems perspective. Next slide, please. I'm going to try to run through this very quickly so that we can talk a little bit about FF 2030. So in PI, what you will learn, or some of the objectives that we envisage for you as a student coming on to PI, is that you'll develop applied understanding of transformative entrepreneurship as a practice. That is, you will be able to put a lot of what you're learning into practice, not just in the classroom, but for some of the PI students, they have developed solutions that they have then taken forward and started as a business or a social enterprise and they're running. You'll learn how to design a transformative enterprise. You'll also be able to develop problem statements. And I'll talk a little bit about, come back to the point of problem statements. You'll learn about design thinking, how to involve your users. And sometimes the user is not just a human, it could be a non-human like nature. How do you engage with them? You learn about entrepreneurial finance. You learn about how you measure your impact. Next slide, please. And the way that you're going to learn on PI is you will have the opportunity to interact with entrepreneurs, so world-class entrepreneurs who will take you through different aspects of the entrepreneurial journey. So starting with a problem statement, Arthur will take you through that. Arthur is an entrepreneur who created a business called BioBean and another business called Skyroom. And then you'll also think about entrepreneurial ecosystems. What does that ecosystem look like? Why does it exist? Who are the different actors in the ecosystem and how do they feed into the social enterprise? Next slide, please. And then we also have a network called Fast Forward 2030, and this is a global network of SDG-focused impact entrepreneurs. They're hosted within UCL's IGP. We have FF 2030 chapters in the UK, Lebanon, Kenya, and the most recent addition is the UAE. And we have several board members. These are award-winning entrepreneurs, academics, policymakers, sectoral experts, and practitioners. And they will be involved in the PI program as well. So you get to interact with them. Next slide, please. And I believe this is my last slide. And just for example, one of the board members is Sol Vega, and she invented this amazing device called Bump, and it helps fight food waste. So you will be taught by Solveiga. She has a design background. She'll take you through the design thinking class and teach you how to use that when it comes to developing an innovation. And then there are also other entrepreneurs that you'll get to interact with at different points in time on your learning journey. So thank you. And I'm going to hand over to Harvey to take us through the next section.
Hi, everyone. Well, I only have 2 slides and my presentation might be a little shorter, but I just wanted to go through a quick overview of what my experience has been so far. I haven't even finished the program yet, but it has been a journey. Actually, the first photo in this slide is from the first day at PPP. It says, "Welcome to the Institute for Global Prosperity and Induction Week." And it has been amazing. I think that is the word. I've had a lot of fun. It has been a very diverse experience. As you can see, I added some classes, slides. Of course, you're going to have some of that, but you're also going to be working on field, engaging with different forms of research, different lecturers from very different backgrounds, and also a wide diversity of classmates that come from different backgrounds. I personally am a designer, but I have encountered people that come from economics, that people that did sustainable development as an undergrad. It has been really an amazing and diverse experience so far. And I also added that little like the grass photo. That was just to show that not everything is classes. That was the first sunny day in London that we got to just sit on the grass and talk with our classmates. That is also part of the experiences. It is a lot of learning, but it's also getting to know a lot of people from different parts of the world. And I'm very thankful for that. And the next slide, I was also asked to talk a little bit about the Global Scholarship for Prosperity that I was granted upon my entry. Just a little bit of context, I also applied for the Chevening Scholarship and didn't get it. I have a national scholarship on top of the Global Scholarship for Prosperity. And I gave that context just to say that I applied for a lot of things. All of those pages are just the official applications that I sent overall for the program, for the scholarships, for the IGP scholarship as well. And that is, I think, my main recommendation if anyone wanted to apply for the IGP scholarship, is that you will have to make many messy drafts of different ideas that you come up with. Some things are going to go on the final version, some things are not, but it all points to just beginning doing it, writing. I think it's really important to think about what you want to get out of the program. And I mean that not only in terms of what you want to learn, but also how you want the experience to be. As I said, I came from a design background, so disciplinary wise, my background was a little different from what I've been experiencing in the program. But I did work also in the Institute for Sustainable Development at my previous university in Chile. And that space was very welcoming. And that was one of the things that I was looking for. I've had the fortune to find that at IGP. And I think that is also one of the things that I attempted to express in all of my applications. I was not just looking for a place that would give me knowledge, but for a place where I could be a part of. And that leads me to my next points. Just be genuine, be consistent. That means if you are clear on what you want and you express that, then that should be consistent through all of your answers. They're going to ask you about different things. If I remember correctly, the questions were a little bit of the background, then what is prosperity to you and what are you interested in the program. You should have a common thread through all of those answers to gain some consistency. And a very practical recommendation, ask someone else to read it. Could be your mom, could be a friend. But when you have that outside perspective, it really helps to just gain some distance from what you're writing, because as you can see on those many photos, you're going to be writing a lot on applications. You're going to get tangled on your own ideas, and having someone else to look at that can really help just clear things out. And finally, just do it. It is a little daunting. It is a tiring process to apply for different things, but you just gotta get it done. Apply, and it might happen. That's all I can say.
Thank you so much, Vera, for that and for sharing your experience as a student and in the scholarship application process. Just if you're interested in the scholarships that are available, you can go to our UCL website. We have the ones that are specific for IGP, such as the one that Javiera has, alongside the one from her country of origin, but also you can take a look at the different scholarships that are available by region. This information is provided by third-party scholarship providers like Chevening, Commonwealth, in the case of Javiera is the government of Chile, etc. But we list there the main scholarships that we know of, but some of them you need to check for the local timelines and requirements. But we try to put there as many as possible, apart from the ones that we offer on our own, the masters, the IGP and the faculty specific ones. Yeah. But